Gonna see if I can get a cameo of my dog here real quick. Come on, Daisy. Hi, say hi. Say hi. Okay. Here she comes. Hi, everybody. I'm here to tell you some stories that have happened to me about the Beatles over the years. And the first one I'm going to talk about is about a guy named Roy Young. And here's him playing the piano with the Beatles in Hamburg at the Star Club in 1962. Those of you who know the Beatles story well know of Roy Young. By the way, I do have apologies for the bad audio and for the not the greatest visual. This is my little studio. Everything's backwards. Sorry about that. But I feel like you can see me a little better if I covered up my bald head and do this. There goes Daisy. Okay. So before you tune out, you all right? Just want to let you know that my stories are about encounters that I've had with various people related to the Beatles. And this is the first one I'm going to tell for the YouTube channel. But for instance, one of them is about getting a Christmas card from Yoko Ono. One of them is having lunch with Walter Shenson. One of them is meeting Sir George Martin, and that's a good one. And one is also hosting an event with Carol James, who was the disc jockey who first played I Want to Hold Your Hand in December 17, 1963 on WWDC. If you're familiar with the story, you might know that. But the one I'm going to start off with is about Roy Young, and his story is also going to tell you 3 stories about the Beatles that you probably never heard. I'm going to make you sit around for a little bit to get to those, but I just want to tell you my background, how I got to know Roy. In 1996, I went to a Beatles convention in Atlanta, and I never had flown to an event, but my friend at the time, Trina Yannikos, who was writing for who was the editor, publisher of a Beatles magazine, fanzine named Day Trippin', asked me to go. So we went down to Atlanta, and there was a great young band there called the Roaches, a tribute band. Well, one of the guests there, special guest, was Roy Young, and so I heard him talking about his stories with the Beatles. And a few months later, he was going to be in Toronto, so we decided to go up there and I would interview him for a story in Day Trippin', which, if you know what that magazine is, you can probably find the story. I don't even think I have it. I might, somewhere up in the attic somewhere. But anyway, I had a good time interviewing him, and I had put together a couple of small events over the years. It wasn't something that I really enjoyed doing. It was stressful, but between I got the manager's card for this great tribute band, and between maybe getting Roy Young to come down, I thought, okay, we can have an event here. So we did, and the event took place at a place called Phantasmagoria in Wheaton, Maryland. It just so happened that the Roaches were playing a couple of shows up this way, so we worked them into the schedule for our event, and worked our event around their schedule, and then paid for Roy and his wife, I'm so sorry, Carol, I think was her name, to fly in to the Washington, D.C. area for the weekend. Things went great. We advertised on the local radio station, Oldies 100.3, and between that and my little Beatles fan club, whatever, we probably got, I don't know, 150, 200 people, maybe less. But then, just before the event, we had there was a strike. The Canadian airline went on strike, and Roy and Carol had to change their flight or something. But thankfully, they got it together and came down, and we had a very nice time. Which doesn't make the story all too exciting, but I'll get to his stories in just a second. Here's another picture of him playing with this Rory Storm. There's Ringo. According to Roy, he introduced the rest of the Beatles to Ringo. In case you don't know Roy's story, he famously was, or at least he claims he was asked by Beatles manager Brian Epstein to join the group, in the spring of 1962 when he was playing at the Star Club. And again, forgive me for my stuttering and so forth and the bad audio. This is my first storytelling here, so we're doing the best with the makeshift studio, so to speak. Anyway, the Beatles asked him to join the band, but he turned them down. He told me because number one, he thought they were a little rough at the edges, and he didn't know if they were going to make it. But probably more importantly, number two, he had such a great gig at the Star Club, where he not only was a house piano player, but he also recruited all of the Liverpool bands to play at the Star Club. He did say the one band that he did not recruit was the Beatles. They were already scheduled to come there when they did in the spring, around April 1962, just before they blew up and when changing drummers. At any rate, Roy's a real nice guy. Carol was so sweet. We drove him down to their hotel in Arlington, Virginia, where they had piano, and he played us a bunch of his. He was known as England's Little Richard, and he could really wail on the piano. So he played us a little show there for a group of us from my fan club group back then, which was a lot of fun. But the next day we had the event, which went I think great. Somewhere I have some photos of it. Maybe I can dig those up. But here's the stories that he told me on the way from the airport down to the hotel. He was very generous and very kind, and before you know it, we had a little rapport. And of course, he was British, so he had this a little bit of an accent. He had a beard. He was probably like 64-ish when I met him. He's since passed away, in case you don't know. That was probably 10 years ago. I'm sorry if I'm not getting that year correct, but it feels like it was about 10 years ago. At any rate, he started telling me stories about the Beatles, and I didn't solicit those. He just started offering them. So I'll tell them in order of interest. Okay. Or maybe scandal. Okay. So the first story is that one day the Beatles and Roy decided to go down to the beach. I don't know what beach it was, but Roy, as part of his deal with his gig at the Star Club, had his own car. It was a big Buick or something like that. That was another reason why he didn't want to leave the jobs, because his car. But anyway, it wasn't his car. It was the owner, was it Horst Fauscher or whatever the guy's name was? I don't remember. But anyway, one day they decided to go to the beach, but the problem is they didn't have any towels. They didn't have bathing suits, and they basically went to the water and frolicked and ended up getting back in the car and without the towels. And they basically, he said, ruined the interior of the car because of the fact that they were covered in seawater. He also said that at one point John Lennon got into the vehicle and drove it right towards the water, but thankfully steered away at the last moment. When they got back to the club, Horst Fauscher was there waiting for them, and he said he remembered waving at him and him waving back and thinking to himself, oh boy, I'm in such trouble because this car is ruined. Okay, that's the first story. I'm going to get to the second story is everybody talks about where the Beatles stayed, behind a movie screen and a couple of beds, and I'm sure you probably know more details than I. I'm a little reluctant to share this because it's kind of disgusting, but let me just put it this way. The Beatles apparently, the plumbing stopped working or something like that, so they had to figure out a way to use the restroom without an actual toilet. Sorry, this story's getting quickly vague and quickly scandalous. At any rate, the whole story is that they chose a spot. I won't go into detail about that, but he said that they had some housekeepers when they came in to clean up. They saw that and I guess smelled it, and they ran off and never cleaned the place again, at least while they were there. But he said it was terrible because rather than pick it up and take care of it, they kind of just let the pile grow. I don't know if it's true. That's the way I remember the story, and it's not much of a story, but the last story is I think the best. So he said that one day after playing a show, all night or whatever, they went back to this girl's house to play like spin the bottle, and it was a few girls, and he said, the funny thing was they were all really ugly, but we were kind of drunk, so we went over and we were playing the game, and all the Beatles were there and me, and then all of a sudden, there's headlights coming through the window, and they're like, "Oh no, that's our husbands. We got to go, or you got to go." So the Beatles were all, scared about getting beaten up or whatever it is. So they ran out of the back door, he said, and there was a fence around the property. It was tall, like 6 feet tall, with like spikes on top. But he said with the adrenaline they had from running out, they all just went clear right over the fence. But he said the one person that didn't leave was John Lennon. He went and he hid in a closet, I guess hopefully to reconnect with the women once their husbands went to bed. That's the whole story, and that's probably going to conclude my first story about meeting Beatles people. I hope you enjoyed it. It's as honest as I could make it and simple. The cool thing is, or the sad thing is, that some of these people that had these encounters with the Beatles are no longer with us, and Roy is among those. So with each passing year, it becomes more and more special to have felt like you got to meet somebody who knew the Beatles. But hopefully I'll be putting more of these up in the coming days, weeks, months, and I hope you enjoyed it. Have a great one.